Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. I appreciate you taking the time to be here, and I think it's going to be an interesting hearing because the BLM has been describing this Planning 2.0 as a simple initiative to so-called increase public involvement and incorporate the most current data and technology into its land use planning. You know, there's no doubt that the BLM's current planning process is often cumbersome, it's inefficient, but I'm concerned that instead of actually increasing public involvement and streamlining the planning process, that this Planning 2.0 will be less efficient, will be more costly, will marginalize experts who are integral to public land management. Those are concerns. I hear them in Wyoming. The agency seems to think that the proposed rule is a simple clarification of the planning process, but this is not the case. What Planning 2.0 proposes would fundamentally alter the way that state, that local, that tribal, local governments, stakeholders, and general public engage in the public land management planning process. As written, Planning 2.0 will effectively ignore expert knowledge in both local agency offices and among local and land users, and I believe compromise the ability of state and local governments to represent the people and the resources in their own districts. In an effort to make its goal of a transition to what's called, quote, landscape scale planning, BLM proposes to shift authority from local and district offices to Washington, D.C. Now, I appreciate that the BLM wants to make management plans more cohesive among local offices, but developing sweeping landscape scale plans from the director's office in Washington, D.C., I believe are going to result in the failure to use invaluable localized knowledge of ecosystems and resources. This change would result in plans that don't reflect on-the-ground realities and ultimately will disenfranchise knowledgeable local agency employees. And it won't just be agency personnel who are overlooked. I believe in the proposed rule, BLM seems to recognize the need for improved stakeholder involvement in the planning process. But unfortunately, the proposed changes will, in my mind, decrease stakeholder involvement at crucial points in the planning process and will further extend plan development times that are already, in my opinion, much too long. The BLM seems to think that the addition of the, quote, planning assessment, close quote, period at the beginning of the planning process would help agency officials understand how the public feels. What the agency clearly fails to realize, however, is that if planning is kept at the local and the state offices level, then officials developing the plans should already be aware of public opinion before the process even begins. Formalizing this preemptive planning assessment period seems to be a justification for regional or federal agency employees to implement a top-down land management agenda. Introduction of public comment on preliminary alternatives before a draft resource management plan is published will only increase the time it takes to complete a resource management plan and, in my view, will provide no added benefit. So how can the public or any relevant stakeholder be expected to comment on proposed alternatives when the details of the plan have yet to be determined? I'm not sure if Senator Wyden is a bit delayed. He may come, and I'll give him an opportunity at that point to make opening remarks. Senator Daines, at this time, would you like to add any opening remarks and to wait till the questioning? Thank you. Well, I appreciate in this that we have wonderful witnesses who are here. We're going to have Mr. Neil Cornsey, who is the Director of the Bureau of Land Management, Jim Magagna, who's the Executive Director of the Wyoming Stock Growers Association, Mr. James Oaksbury, who is the Director of the Western Governors Association, Ms. Kathleen Sagama, who is the Vice President of Public and Government Affairs for the Western Energy Alliance, and Mr. Mark Squilacci, who is a Professor of Law at the University of Colorado Law School. And before turning to our first witness, I'd like to take a moment to thank my friend Jim Magagna for being here today, a native of Rock Springs, Wyoming. Jim has served as the Executive Director of the Wyoming Stock Growers Association since 1998. He is a veteran witness before congressional committees. He provides an invaluable perspective on all things related to agriculture and public land management. So I'm happy, Jim, that you could join us today to share your thoughts with us and with the rest of the panel. I'd like to remind the witnesses that their full written testimony will be made part of the official hearing record. Please keep your statements to 5 minutes so that we may have time for questions. Director Cornsey, please proceed.